Hey, it's Noah with American Trucks. On the big table in front of me, we've got the barred front bumper for the 13 to 18 Ram 1500, excluding the Rebel. Now this bumper is going to be a great choice for the Ram owner who wants some more lighting, some front end protection, and the look of a tight-fitting and low-profile upgraded bumper. Just at first looks with this bumper, it's a lower profile option and it does fold here at the sides for smaller shipping and handling, and I really like that. It doesn't look like a big pouty lip, and I think probably the best part of this one is that it looks right at home on a really clean and stock truck. Now the next thing I want to point out is that we've actually got two LED locations here on the wings of the bumpers for some cube lights that are included, as well as a mounting spot for a light bar up to 30 inches here in the center. Now in the grand scheme of things, usually aftermarket bumpers are installed to give the vehicle some better protection on the trail or even just on the road for daily fender bender protection. Now this guy is seriously beefy, and it even has an integrated splash guard plate here on the front that's going to protect you from obstacles underneath as well. The barred bumper is constructed entirely from heavy-duty hardcore steel, and this isn't just a huge piece of sheet metal bumper with poor fit and finish. There's actually a lot of detail integrated into the construction of this bumper, right down to the little tabs and the little plates here for the front plate application. Now the main openings in the front of the bumper are covered in steel grills, and everything can be customized to work exactly how you want it. You can just pull this front grill off, throw your light bar of choice in there, and mount it right up. Now, the two LED bricks that come with the bumper are IP67 rated as well, so they're seriously heat and water resistant. Everything across the bumper, from the brackets to the screws, is coated in natural black, and that's going to ward off any rust or corrosion. Now lastly, the only other thing I want to mention is that it even comes with a 5-year warranty, so you can be confident with your purchase. This barred bumper falls right around $600, which isn't going to put a huge dent in your wallet in terms of larger truck upgrades. Now I do think a sub $1,000 price point for a bumper like this is a great price, considering that just getting paint issues fixed on a stock bumper can cost more than a full bumper upgrade these days. Looking at the install aspect of this bumper, it has an install difficulty of 1 out of 3 wrenches in 2 hours for that install time. And there's nothing to worry about as far as the install goes, because we're going to walk you through it step by step right now over in the install bay.
The tools you'll need for this project are an impact wrench, a 1/2 inch, a 3/8, and a 1/4 inch drive ratchet, an 18-inch swivel socket, an 18 and a 19 deep socket, a 7mm, a 10mm socket, a short extension, a 13mm, an 18mm, and 19mm wrench, a panel removal tool, and you'll also need to source some zip ties. Hi everyone, today we're installing a front bumper on our Ram, but before we do that, let's watch a short video on how to uninstall the stock bumper first.
All right, so the first step in our uninstall with the hood popped, and you will have to remove your rad support cover. Our truck does not currently have one. Grab a 10mm socket and remove the 4 bolts holding on the top of the grill. With all of the bolts removed, lift up on the brackets on the grill, slide it off your truck, grab the bottom and pull straight towards you. All right, at this point we need to remove 3 of the bolts holding the bumper to the wheel well liner. Our truck only has 1 here, but make sure that you have all 3 of these out. Grab your 7mm socket and remove them. I'm also going to remove this 7mm bolt as well, so we can peel back the wheel well liner and have a bit more room. With the wheel well liner pulled back, now we can see the bolt that holds on the fender to the bumper. You might have a little bit of trouble, but it's right on the inside here. It is pretty long, and it's in a precarious location, so you're gonna need a small ratchet or even a ratcheting wrench, 10mm. If you like, you can take the headlight out to get a little bit better access, but if you're cool to use a small tool, you can get to it right from the wheel well. Let's go ahead and remove it. All right, now we're gonna repeat that process on the other side. All right, so at this point, we're gonna remove the nuts that hold on our bumper to our frame. Now you will notice this new replacement bolt on our bumper. So we're gonna need to use a wrench on the backside here. You guys will not. So grab your 18mm socket and remove these. Now you may want a swivel socket for some of these to be able to get a good angle on your nut. Go ahead and remove them. All right, now the last one is a little bit higher up, so we're gonna be using a ratchet because the gun does not fit. It also may be a little bit hard to see, but it's the same concept of the other three you just took out. Grab your 18mm socket and repeat that process on the other side. Again, we're gonna be using a swivel for this one. It's a little bit easier. And make sure your bumper is supported so that it does not fall when you take out the rest of the bolts. And finally, the last nut all the way up the top. We're gonna grab a ratchet for this one and remove it. And finally, make sure you unplug the fog light harness, press down on the gray tab, and remove it. All right, with all of those bolts removed, you can grab your bumper. You may want a friend for this step to help you out, and slide it off the truck. With the bumper cover removed, you can now grab the bumper itself and pull it off of your truck. We do have to remove these plastic pieces underneath the headlight. There's 3 bolts, one on the inside, one underneath, and one to the side. So grab a 10mm socket, and I do have a small extension. Let's get these removed. Now you can repeat that on the other side. This one is broken on our truck. You will still have 3. Let's get these removed. Grab your 10mm socket and a small extension and pull them out. And finally, we have to remove this center support piece. There are 2 bolts on either side. Grab your 10mm socket and remove them. And repeat that on the other side.
Now that we've got our stock bumper off of the truck, we can go ahead and start assembling our new bumper. Now you'll notice when it comes from the manufacturer that is in a compacted style. So these wings on the outside will flip out and we'll secure those to the actual bumper itself so that they don't flop around. Now, when it comes from the manufacturer, you'll notice on the bottom of the bumper, these wings are attached with bolts and nuts. And that's just to keep it from moving around during shipping. So the first thing we're gonna do is remove these 2 nuts and bolts, one on each side. And they are loosely attached, so you shouldn't need any wrenches or sockets to take these out. So once you get these out, you can go ahead and just get rid of these. Once you've got them out, then you just swing the wing out so that it matches up with the bumper on this mounting plate right here. And once you've got that done, you'll see there's a packet in the kit that comes with these bolts with lock washers and flat washers. They are going to go in these opposite corners here, and you'll notice that they are attached with nuts and bolts here as well for the pivots, so that's loose. So all you have to do is just maneuver them a little bit. To get these new bolts in. So we'll go ahead and install the second one. And you don't want to tighten these down all the way yet because we do have some adjustment that we may have to make once we get it installed. So once you've got the bolts in, you can go ahead and do the same thing for the other side. Now, this bumper does not come with a center light bar, but if you choose to install one, here's what you're going to need to do. It does come with the brackets to install the center light bar. It just doesn't come with the light bar itself. So what you're going to have to do is remove these two nuts and bolts here in the center of this fill panel. And then you're also going to remove the ones on the outside of the center panel as well. Now, these outside ones here, you're going to want to save because you're going to use that to attach the brackets to the back side of the bumper. And those brackets are these little J brackets here. And they're going to go right where those bolts come out of. And then you can attach your light bar to those brackets once you get them installed. Now it does come with these outer cube lights that'll go on either side of the bumper here. Then we will show you how to install those next. Now at this point, we're ready to put our bracket onto our fog light, and we're going to drop the nuts for the bracket inside the slot on the back of the fog light. It's a little tricky to get these in sometimes in the right position, but you can see the slots where the nuts are supposed to go. So we'll go ahead and just drop this into place on each side. And then as you can see, they're not exactly in the position that we need them to be. So we're just going to use the supplied Allen wrench to slide it through the hole and maneuver the nut into position where it should be. Now, as you can see, we've got the nuts positioned where they need to be. Now we can go ahead and install our bracket over the nuts, slide the mounting bolt through the bottom of the bracket, and making sure that the round part of the bracket is facing towards the back of the light. We'll go ahead and slide it into position, and then using one of the supplied Allen bolts with the supplied Allen wrench, we'll go ahead and install this bracket on the back of the light. Now we don't need to tighten these all the way up just yet because we're going to need adjustment space once we actually get it installed on the vehicle. Now we'll go ahead and install the other side. Now we're ready to install our light onto our bumper. So we'll slide the bracket with the bolt on it up through the mounting tab, install our flat washer and our lock washer, and then our nut. Now we're just going to put this on finger tight right now just to make sure that it stays in place, and we'll make a final adjustment once we get the bumper installed on the vehicle. Once you've got this installed, you can go ahead and repeat this whole process for the other side. Now we're ready to install our filler panels on the top of our bumper. And you want to make sure that this point on the filler panel is towards the rear of the bumper. Also note that the nuts are welded to the bottom side of this filler panel. So we'll just set this in place over the slotted holes, install the supplied button head bolts, Now you also want to make sure that you include using the lock washer and the flat washer as well. Now at this point, we're just going to leave them finger tight so that we can adjust it once we've actually got the bumper installed on the vehicle. So as you can see, it will slide a little bit so you can adjust the exact fit once it's installed on the vehicle. Now you can go ahead and repeat this process for the other side. All right, now that we've got our wings attached and bolted down and our filler panels installed, as well as our fog lights, now we can go ahead and get our bumper installed on the truck. Now, one of the things I like to do when we're putting these back in, since we're reusing the factory hardware, I like to use a little bit of tape and put that on the back side of the bolt to hold it to the back of the bumper while we're installing it, so that we don't have to worry about it falling out and being out of place. Now, the other thing that we need to note on this particular bumper is that the upper bolts for our bumper are welded into the factory bumper, so we cannot reuse those. If in fact you do have the same situation on yours, you will need to source a couple of new bolts and washers and nuts. Now the ones that we're using are M12 by 1.75 thread pitch by 30 millimeters long. So hopefully you'll be able to reuse your factory bolts to mount this up, but if not, you now have the specs to be able to buy some new ones and get it installed. So let's go ahead and get a buddy to help us lift this up, and then we'll go ahead and get it installed. Put a little tape behind it, slide it up in, and then just make sure that the tape is stuck to the back of the bumper. All right, now I've got a buddy here to help me lift this up because it is pretty heavy, and we'll go ahead and get this started, get the nuts put on it, and then we'll finish tightening it up. Now, as you can see, we've got our truck up on a lift. You can absolutely do this while the truck is on the ground, or maybe on a set of jack stands if you like. The only reason we've got ours up on a lift is to give you a better idea of what we're doing underneath once we get started. So let's go ahead and finish tightening up these bolts, and then we'll move on to wiring our fog lights. As you can see, we've got our two bottom bolts in here from our factory bumper. And our top one here, we're going to reuse our replacement bolts since our other ones are welded to the factory bumper. So we've got a flat washer. We're going to insert that through the front side, and then we'll use a flat washer and a lock washer on the other side and attach our nut. Okay, now you can install the one on the other side as well, and then we'll talk about aligning the bumper and tightening everything down. All right, so now that we've got all of our bolts installed and the bumper is mounted securely, now we want to make sure that it's centered from side to side where we want it. Once we've got that taken care of, then we can go ahead and adjust it for height up and down. So as you can see, we've got a little bit of gap on our passenger side here, more so than what we have on the driver's side. So let's go ahead and get that adjusted so that they're even, and then we'll tighten down our mounting bolts. Right, so we're going to raise it up on our passenger side to where we want it, and then using our 18 millimeter socket, we'll go ahead and tighten these down. Now we'll get the other side. Now, if you were able to reuse all of your factory mounting bolts, you should be able to use your 18 millimeter socket on all of them to tighten them down. But since we've replaced ours, we're going to be using our 19mm socket and our 19mm wrench. And now we'll do the same thing on the other side. All right, now we'll tighten up the 2 bolts on each side of our wings here. And to do that, we're going to use our 17mm wrench and our 17mm socket. And then the other one is right above it. Now we'll do the same thing for the other side. All right, now we can tighten down the filler panels on top of the bumper using a 4mm Allen head wrench. So we got one right here above the light. And then we've got the one in the middle, right in the corner of the bumper. And the last one is on the end. A little bit difficult to see, but it's right up here in the corner. All right, now you can tighten the ones on the other side as well. Now we'll tighten down our fog lights using a 13mm wrench for the top bolt. And then using the supplied 5mm Allen wrench to tighten down the ones on the side. And now you can do the same thing for the other light. Now we can install our spring-mounted nuts for our splash shield on the tabs in front, making sure, of course, that the nut portion is to the back. Now using the supplied button head bolts with a lock washer and a flat washer, we'll go ahead and install our splash shield to the spring clips that we just installed. Once you've got all the bolts started, you can use a supplied Allen wrench to go ahead and tighten them up. And now we can go ahead and get our fog lights wired up. So before we actually get our wiring installed, I want to give you a little breakdown on exactly what's included here. We've got a complete wiring harness from start to finish, including 2 plug-in connectors, one of which will connect to each fog light underneath. And then in addition to that, we have a relay that's wired in, and we have a power and a ground wire that will connect to our battery. And we also have an on-off switch for the fog lights. Now, because of the fact that we're not making this a permanent addition to our truck, there's some things that we won't be doing to be able to show you. One of which is drilling a couple of holes in the firewall and in the dash to mount your light. So I'll show you as much as we possibly can, and then I'll explain, hopefully well enough, that you'll understand what you need to do to get the rest of the system installed. So let's go ahead and get started with getting this all hooked up. All right, first thing we're going to do is disconnect the negative side of our battery cable here so that we don't have any worries about shorting anything out. So we'll use our 10mm socket here to loosen up our negative battery. And we'll go ahead and take that off. And that should help us avoid any issues later on. Now, next thing we're going to do is take off this nut here on the positive side of the battery so that we can hook up the positive power side of our wiring harness. So we'll take our red wire that has our inline fuse in it, and we'll hook that up to the positive side of the battery. Now we'll disconnect the other bolt on the terminal here with our 13mm socket. And we'll hook up the black wire to that terminal. And we'll reinstall the nut and tighten that down. Now we're going to go ahead and leave our battery disconnected while we finish running the rest of the wires. And one other thing you may want to do is figure out a way to permanently mount this relay either to the body or to your fuse box down here with a nut and bolt, something that you will have to source if that's where you choose to put it. Now we can go ahead and run our wires down to our lights, and we're just going to feed this down through the engine compartment here, and we'll run one over to the passenger side, one to the driver's side, and then we'll tie up any loose wires that may come in play here. We'll go ahead and feed our wires down through the bottom. Now we'll go ahead and get those hooked up. Now to run our wiring harness, what we're going to do is just going to run it over the frame rail on the driver's side, over the frame rail on the passenger side, and then we'll plug it in to the fog light over here, and then we'll zip tie it to the mounting bracket for the bumper. So over the frame rail there, over the frame rail there, and then we'll go ahead and plug this in until it snaps. And then what we'll do is we'll use a zip tie to go through the extra bolt hole up here on the mounting bracket to help keep it out of the way. Make sure it doesn't get tangled up in anything. And then we'll go ahead and run another zip tie through the bracket that was originally holding the wing during shipping, just to keep all the wires nice and tucked out of the way. And we'll also go ahead and plug in this fog light over here. All right, once we've got that done, we'll go ahead and wrap up all the extra wire that we don't need. And we'll wrap that up with a zip tie as well. And then we'll use another zip tie here to zip tie all of that wire to the extra bolt hole, just like we did on the other side. Now you may also want to include the factory harness in that wrap up there because you're not going to be using it again for these new fog lights. Now let's go back up top and deal with the switch. All right, now we've reached the point where we can't do anything more about running the wires. because what has to happen now in order to get this installed is you need to drill a hole in your firewall. You need to drill a 3/4 inch hole in your firewall. Now when you do that, what you're going to want to do is disconnect this plug here where the switch goes in. All right, that way you can just run the end of the plug through the hole that you drill. And I also recommend, highly recommend, that you also purchase a grommet when you run this through. That way you can protect the wire from the edge of the hole where you cut through. And then you'll also need some silicone to go around to seal up that hole. Now, once you get this end coming from the engine bay through the hole, then you can go inside, plug this back in, and run your wiring so that you can put your switch where you want to put your switch. Now this switch does have a double-sided tape on the back side, so you won't need to drill a hole in your dash in order to get it to fit. So you just peel off the backing here, make sure your dash is absolutely clean. I highly recommend using some alcohol and a cloth so that it will actually stick the way you want it to. And then just go ahead and tie up any loose wires, make sure that they're not touching any kind of moving part or a high heat source. Once you've got that done, then we can go ahead and complete our installation, put our grill back on, and test out our lights. All right, now that you've got all of your wires run and your switches on the inside, we go ahead and hook up our battery. We'll just put this on like so. Tighten it down with our 10mm socket. Now we go ahead and put our grill on and close this up. Now we go ahead and reinstall our grill. Line up our holes. Make sure everything snaps into place. And then we'll reinstall the original hardware. And tighten it all down with our 10mm socket. And finally, we'll reinstall our radiator cover and secure it with the original push pins. Now we'll go inside and show you how to hook up your switch. All right, once you've got your hole drilled in the firewall and you grommet in place and you pull your switch through, now you can decide where it is exactly that you want to mount your switch. Now for our purposes, we're just going to slap it on right here. And as you can see, we've already got power to the lights. So we'll go ahead and remove the backing off of the switch. And we'll just stick it right here on the dash. Now one thing you do want to make sure of when you run this is you make sure that this wire that's coming through the firewall is tied up underneath to another wiring harness or something, just to make sure that it's out of the way and it's not going to interfere with your brake pedal or your steering column, or it's going to be near any kind of heat source. Once you do that, your installation is complete. And that wraps up our review and install of the barred front bumper for your 13 to 18 Ram 1500, excluding the Rebel. Thanks for watching, and remember, for all things Ram, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.